Ignorance is dangerous, but ignorance that believes itself to be intelligent, that is lethal. Look around. We live in an era where the most incompetent people believe they are geniuses, where those who know the least are the most confident, where stupidity has been elevated to an impenetrable state of arrogance. And the worst part, these people are not only convinced they are right, they actually believe they are smarter than everyone else. They don't doubt. They don't question. They don't even consider for a second the possibility that they might be wrong. They simply think they know it all. But there's one study that changes everything. David Dunning and Justin Kruger discovered something disturbing. The most incompetent people tend to overestimate their own abilities. In other words, the less someone knows, the more convinced they are that they are right. Why? Because ignorance comes with an even bigger problem. Those who are truly ignorant don't have the ability to realize they are ignorant. Now think about this for a moment. How many times have you argued with someone who had absolutely no idea what they were talking about, but defended their point with unshakable conviction? How many times have you seen an ignorant person laugh at a complex idea simply because they didn't understand it? This is the world we live in, a world where mediocrity has become the norm, a world where ignorance is rewarded with confidence, a world where real knowledge is discarded because it requires effort, patience, and humility. Dunning and Kruger scientifically proved that the less a person knows, the more they think they know. And this phenomenon is destroying modern society, because today you don't need knowledge to have an opinion. You don't need to study to call yourself an expert. You don't even need to understand something to believe you are superior. We live in the age of empty opinions, an era of noise without substance. But if you're here, it's because you don't want to be part of that. You know, there is something deeply broken in the way people perceive themselves. And if you keep watching, I will reveal the hidden mechanism behind this phenomenon. I will show you how the minds of those who will never admit their ignorance actually work. And I will explain why this cognitive error has been used as a powerful tool of mass manipulation. So subscribe now, hit the like button, and share this video with those who need to wake up. Because here, we expose the truths that most people don't dare to say. Together, we will reach 10,000 subscribers and build a community that truly understands the power of the mind. Because what you're about to discover will change the way you see the world forever. The problem with ignorance is not just the lack of knowledge, but the inability to recognize that lack. Because a truly ignorant person doesn't know they are ignorant. And worse, they lack the mental resources to understand their own limitations. Dunning and Kruger proved this in their study. When incompetent people are asked to evaluate their own abilities, they almost always rank themselves above average. It doesn't matter if they can't solve a math problem. It doesn't matter if they don't understand the topic they're discussing. It doesn't even matter if they repeat baseless arguments. They always believe they are right, and their own incompetence prevents them from seeing the flaws in their reasoning. And this is where things get dangerous. Because this phenomenon doesn't just affect individuals, it affects entire societies. Throughout history, humanity has relied on leaders, thinkers, and visionaries to push knowledge to new heights. But what happens when the masses believe they know more than those who have dedicated their lives to understanding reality? What happens when ignorance is not just tolerated, but celebrated? We get exactly what we are seeing today. A society where any opinion is considered valid. A world where anyone feels entitled to correct an expert. A culture where noise has replaced truth. Because the problem isn't just ignorance itself. The real danger is the arrogance of ignorance. If an ignorant person knew they were ignorant, they would seek to learn. If an incompetent person realized their own shortcomings, they would try to improve. But the Dunning-Kruger effect creates a cruel paradox. The ignorant believe they already know everything, so they reject any new information that challenges their worldview. And this has become a cognitive epidemic. People with no education, dismissing scientific research. Individuals who have never read a single book questioning complex philosophical theories. Minds programmed to consume shallow content, rejecting anything that requires more than 5 minutes of thought. And the digital era has amplified this problem exponentially. In the past, access to knowledge was limited by education. You had to put in the effort. You had to study for years before you could speak with authority on a subject. But today, anyone with an internet connection believes that reading a single social media post makes them an expert. That watching a 30-second video gives them the authority to debate topics they don't even understand. And the problem is not just that people speak without knowing. The real danger is that their own incompetence blinds them to their mistakes. The Greek philosopher Socrates said it more than 2,000 years ago. I only know that I know nothing. With this simple phrase, he revealed a profound truth. The truly intelligent person is the one who recognizes their own limits, not because they feel inferior, but because they understand the vastness of what remains to be learned. But the problem with the ignorant is not just their lack of knowledge, it's their excess of confidence, because they don't stop to doubt. They don't analyze. They don't question. They simply assume they are right. And that irrational certainty is what makes them the most dangerous. This arrogance of incompetence doesn't just manifest in intellectual discussions. It happens in everyday life. It happens in politics. It happens in culture. It happens every time a society stops listening to those who truly understand reality. Because when mediocrity becomes the norm, the truly intelligent are silenced. And here is where an even greater problem emerges. Ignorance doesn't just reproduce, it punishes excellence. The psychologist Charles Murray spoke about a disturbing phenomenon: the death of the cognitive elite. What does this mean? That societies begin to reject their most brilliant minds in favor of widespread mediocrity. Why? Because the ignorant, believing themselves to be intelligent, see the truly wise as a threat. They ridicule them. They label them arrogant. They accuse them of being elitist. And because the ignorant are the majority, they impose their ignorance as the standard. This has happened time and time again throughout history. Entire civilizations have collapsed because their leaders were chosen, not for their wisdom, not for their ability to solve problems, not for their vision of the future, but simply because they told the masses what they wanted to hear. And that is when a society enters its decline. Knowledge stops being valued. Critical thinking is discarded. Complexity is reduced to empty slogans. And when stupidity becomes the dominant voice, collapse is inevitable. The Dunning-Kruger Effect explains why ignorant people never recognize their own ignorance. But there's something even more dangerous than simple lack of knowledge. The ignorant don't just fail to recognize their ignorance. They also reject any attempt to improve. They are resistant to learning. They are hostile to growth. They are enemies of anything that challenges their limited perception of the world. And instead of correcting this, modern society has amplified it. Because ignorance sells. Because empty entertainment generates more money than education. Because it's easier to manipulate a population, convinced they already know everything, than one that constantly seeks to expand its limits. And here we arrive at the darkest point of all. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not just an individual problem. It is a tool of control. Because if people don't know that they don't know, they will never rebel against the system that keeps them in ignorance. They will never seek to change their situation. They will never try to go beyond what they are allowed to believe. A limited mind is a docile mind. A mind that does not question itself is a mind that will accept any narrative without doubt. And when millions of people are trapped in this state, absolute power is guaranteed. Dunning-Kruger discovered the mechanism, but the elites had understood it long before. Divide people in a world of opinions instead of knowledge. Convince them that their perception is enough. Make them believe they don't need to study. Make them believe that any data that contradicts their beliefs is false. And the result? Exactly what we see today. A world where those who know the least talk the most. A world where arrogance has replaced wisdom. A world where stupidity has become an ideology. The Dunning-Kruger Effect doesn't just explain why stupid people think they are smart. It explains why modern society is trapped in a cycle of reinforced ignorance. A world where each generation is more incompetent than the last. A society where those who actually think are seen as a threat. Because real power isn't in information. It's in the perception of information. And whoever controls that perception controls the destiny of humanity. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not just a psychological curiosity. It is a mental structure that has been cultivated in modern society to perpetuate mediocrity. Education no longer teaches people to think. It teaches them to memorize answers. Social media has turned opinions into a product where validation is more important than truth. Information has been fragmented into bite-sized content, designed to be consumed in seconds without allowing for deep analysis. And the result? A society where those who know the least have the loudest voices. Because their confidence is not based on knowledge. It is based on their inability to recognize their own limits. Dunning-Kruger not only explained why stupid people think they are smart, they also proved that real experts tend to underestimate themselves. Because the more you learn, the more you realize how much you still don't know. This means that the wisest people doubt, reflect, and question, while the ignorant cling to their beliefs with absolute certainty. But here's the real problem. We live in a society where certainty is valued more than truth. People don't seek answers. They seek confirmation. They don't want to understand. They want to validate what they already believe. And that is why the Dunning-Kruger effect has become a weapon of control. Because politics uses it constantly. Populist speeches simplify complex problems, offering easy answers to issues that require deep analysis. People are told what they want to hear, not what they need to know. Narratives are created where ignorant people feel empowered, where they can reject any data that contradicts their worldview. But here's the truth. Not all opinions are equal. Not all perspectives have the same value. Because truth is not democratic. It is not decided by consensus. It does not adapt to what the majority wants to believe. Yet the modern world has built a society where perception is more important than reality. A world where a million ignorant voices can silence a single expert who actually knows what they are talking about. Ignorance is not just a problem, it's a business. And those who control the system know this perfectly well, because an uninformed society is a manipulable society, because a distracted population is an obedient population, because a stupid person is a perfect consumer. They don't question, they don't analyze, they just buy, obey, and follow the herd. That's why modern entertainment has been designed to keep you ignorant. TV, movies, music, and media have reduced thinking to instant emotional reactions. Reflection has been replaced by spectacle. Education has been substituted by entertainment. And the worst part? People don't just accept this dumbing down. They have embraced it. Because when you grow up in a world where ignorance is the norm, wisdom becomes an anomaly. When the incompetent dominate the conversation, excellence becomes a threat. Deep knowledge is viewed with suspicion. Intelligence is seen as arrogance. Critical thinking is dismissed as elitism. And this is how the Dunning-Kruger effect stops being just a cognitive bias and becomes a system of control. Because when ignorance is imposed as the norm, any attempt to challenge it is considered an attack. History has proven this time and time again. Societies that glorify mediocrity are doomed to collapse. Because when the majority thinks they know more than the real experts, when popular opinion replaces knowledge, when people stop learning because they believe they already have all the answers, collapse is inevitable. Not because information has disappeared, not because knowledge has been destroyed, but because people have stopped seeking it. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not just an individual flaw. It is a reflection of a civilization programmed to reject its own evolution. Because real evolution requires humility. It requires accepting that there is always something new to learn. It requires understanding that there is always another perspective to consider. It requires recognizing that doubt is a sign of intelligence, not weakness. But modern society has turned doubt into a defect. It has made people afraid to question themselves. It has created a system where ignorance is not just accepted, it is rewarded. Because a person who doesn't question is a person who is easy to manipulate. And this is where we face the greatest paradox of all. Social media had the potential to be the greatest educational tool in human history. Never before had we had access to so much information, so quickly and so freely. And yet, it has become the greatest weapon for spreading ignorance, because lies spread faster than truth, because uninformed opinions go viral more than well-argued ideas, because the Dunning-Kruger effect makes the incompetent believe they are experts. And in the digital age, the loudest voices always win. This phenomenon has been exploited by every power structure in existence, because a world where ignorance dominates is a world where manipulation is easy. People don't question what they consume. They don't analyze the information they receive. They don't stop to think if what they believe actually makes sense. They just repeat. They just follow the current. They just accept the version of reality that is most convenient for them. And that is the true danger of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Not just that people are ignorant, but that ignorance has become a self-defense mechanism. Try to correct someone trapped in this cycle, and they will take it as a personal attack. They won't see it as an opportunity to learn. They will see it as a threat to their identity. Because when someone has built their entire perception of the world on ignorance, admitting they are wrong would mean dismantling their entire reality. And most people would rather hold on to a lie than face the painful truth. Ignorance is not just a lack of information. It is a psychological barrier that prevents growth. It is a mental structure that blocks any attempt at evolution. It is a defense mechanism that protects the ego at the expense of the truth. And when this mindset spreads across an entire society, the result is a world where stupidity becomes the norm. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not just a cognitive bias. It is the reason why the world is the way it is. It explains why the most important decisions are made by the least qualified people. It explains why the loudest voices are often the most empty. It explains why so many people cling to nonsensical ideas with unwavering conviction. Because incompetence not only reinforces itself, it actively seeks to suppress intelligence. And as long as people remain unaware of this, the cycle will continue. Because ignorance does not need justification. It only needs a voice confident enough to convince others that it is right. And if the masses keep choosing to listen to the loudest people instead of the wisest ones, the fate of society is already sealed. Ignorance is a parasite that feeds on certainty. It does not need facts. It does not need evidence. It does not need logic. It only needs an unshakable belief in its own correctness. And when a society allows ignorance to become its driving force, the result is the absolute collapse of critical thinking. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is not just an error in perception, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The stupid believe they are intelligent. The intelligent doubt themselves, and mediocrity becomes the standard by which the world is governed. But the worst part is not the existence of ignorance. It is its glorification. We have moved from a world where wisdom was admired to a world where arrogant ignorance is celebrated. People no longer want to learn. They mock those who try. Doubt, which is the true sign of intelligence, is now perceived as a weakness. Deep thinking is seen as unnecessary. The effort to understand is dismissed as elitism. And this is how civilizations collapse. Not because of war, not because of external crises, not because of economic failure, but simply because the masses have decided that thinking is no longer necessary. This is not an exaggeration. It is the reality we live in, a reality where anyone can speak with the same authority as an expert, a reality where any information can be dismissed simply because it does not fit what someone wants to believe, a reality where the truth no longer matters. Because the truth does not shout. The truth does not impose itself. The truth does not fight. The truth simply exists. But in a world dominated by ignorance, the truth is not enough. And here is the most important point of all. This system will not change. Not because it is impossible to change it. Not because the tools do not exist. But because most people do not want it to change. Because the ignorant do not seek knowledge. They seek confirmation. Because they do not want to learn. They want to be right. Because they do not want to expand their minds. They want to feel comfortable inside the mental prison they have been raised in. And as long as this continues, stupidity will keep winning. So what can be done? There's only one answer: individual resistance. Not trying to convince the masses, not trying to change a system designed to favor incompetence, but becoming the one thing that the system cannot control. An individual who can no longer be manipulated. Because real power is not in money. It is not in influence. It is not in authority. Real power is in knowledge. The ability to see the truth in a world that has chosen to live in lies. And if you have understood everything I have told you, you can no longer live as you did before, because now you have seen the prison. And if you have seen the prison, you only have two options: accept it and pretend you never saw it, or break it and become what the system fears the most: someone who truly thinks. If you have made it this far, it means that you are different. It means that you refuse to be part of the herd. It means that you are ready to see reality as it is. And that is why I need you to take action now. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with those who need to wake up. Because this knowledge cannot stay here. It must spread. Together we will reach 10,000 subscribers and build a community of people who dare to challenge the illusion of false knowledge. Because in this world there are only two types of people: those who are slaves to their own ignorance, and those who have decided to free themselves. Now it is up to you to decide which side you are on.